It was the middle of July in 2023 when Emily Carter, a 29-year-old nurse known for her compassion and long shifts at Portland General Hospital, decided to escape the city for a while. Emily wasn't a thrill seeker. She was responsible, careful, and often cautious. But she loved nature. On her rare days off, she would head into Oregon's vast forests, carrying only the essentials: a small backpack, water, snacks, and her ever-present Apple Watch that tracked her steps and heart rate. That Saturday morning, she told her sister she planned a short solo hike on a popular trail, promising to be back before dinner. The trail she chose wasn't considered dangerous. Families often hiked there on weekends, and locals described it as peaceful, almost too quiet. Emily parked her silver Honda Civic at the trailhead around 10 a.m., waved to a couple walking their dog, and disappeared into the thick line of trees. Nobody knew it at the time, but that would be the last confirmed sighting of her alive. By afternoon, her family grew uneasy. Emily was punctual to a fault, someone who never ignored texts or calls. When hours passed with no response, her sister drove to the trailhead. The car was still there, locked and untouched, sitting under the dim glow of the fading sun. The uneasy silence of the forest seemed to swallow the surroundings whole. It was as though Emily had entered the woods and simply dissolved into the landscape. Search teams arrived that evening. They combed the trail with flashlights, calling her name again and again. Nothing answered back. Not even the usual rustle of wildlife. No footprints, no discarded belongings, not even a water bottle was found. Volunteers noted how eerie the forest felt, unusually still, as if the woods themselves were hiding something. Some of them whispered that the trail seemed different that night. Colder, heavier, watching. By midnight, her disappearance was officially declared suspicious. Detectives cordoned off the area, snapping photos of her parked car, the damp trail, and the last known stretch where she might have walked. To many, it was unthinkable. A young nurse who spent her life saving others had stepped into a well-traveled hiking path and vanished as though the earth had swallowed her whole. The morning after Emily's disappearance, the trail was unrecognizable. What had been a quiet hiking spot just hours earlier was now buzzing with emergency vehicles, flashing lights, and restless voices. Police officers marked the area with yellow tape, while volunteers lined up with backpacks and gear. Search dogs barked anxiously, pulling at their leashes, ready to be led into the thick woods. Helicopters hovered overhead, scanning the canopy for any trace of the missing nurse. From the very start, the case drew unusual attention. Emily wasn't a drifter or a runaway. She was a respected nurse, a woman with a steady career and a family who knew her habits inside out. People felt invested, almost protective, as if losing her to the forest would be an unforgivable failure. Teams split up into groups and began combing the trails systematically. They searched every bend, every patch of dirt, and every stream where someone might slip and fall. Hours turned into days, yet nothing turned up. No broken branches suggesting a struggle, no torn clothing, not even a single footprint that could be tied to her. Searchers described the experience as maddening, like chasing a shadow that refused to be caught. Some volunteers admitted later that they felt as if the forest was resetting itself, erasing signs before they could be discovered. The helicopters, too, reported nothing unusual. Infrared scanners picked up animals, deer, coyotes, the occasional bear, but never a human heat signature. The absence of clues was more haunting than any discovery. Investigators began to wonder if Emily had even stayed on the trail at all. Did she venture off into the woods? Did someone lead her away? Or was she carried, Each possibility carried a weight that pressed heavily on her family, who stood anxiously at the base camp every day, praying for news that never came. As the days dragged on, emotions ran high. Emily's mother refused to leave the search site, holding on to the hope that her daughter was simply lost, maybe injured, waiting to be found. Her sister, however, admitted something felt wrong, that Emily wasn't just missing. She was gone in a way that couldn't be explained by accidents or bad luck. The lead detective grew frustrated with the lack of progress. Usually, a missing person leaves a breadcrumb trail, no matter how faint. But here, there was nothing. Not one breadcrumb. By the end of the second week, the official search began to wind down. Police resources were stretched thin, and with no evidence of foul play, the case started slipping into the category of unsolved mysteries. But for the volunteers and Emily's family, stopping was not an option. Even in the dead of night, small groups kept combing the woods with flashlights and hope. What they didn't realize was that the forest was about to give them something back. Not the answer they wanted, but a clue that would chill everyone to the bone. When the official search began losing momentum, the silence left behind was quickly filled with speculation. Emily's disappearance became the talk of the town, spreading from local news outlets to online forums where strangers tried to piece together the puzzle. Everyone had an opinion, and the theories multiplied daily. Some people claimed the dense Oregon woods hid more secrets than anyone wanted to admit. Abandoned cabins, dangerous wildlife, and even whispers of strange cult activity in remote areas. To them, Emily had simply walked into the wrong place at the wrong time. One of the first theories to gain traction was the possibility of a wild animal attack. Black bears, cougars, and coyotes were known to roam the region. But searchers who scoured the area found no blood, no torn fabric, and no drag marks, nothing consistent with an animal encounter. Wildlife experts even stepped forward to point out that predators rarely attack humans in broad daylight, and when they do, the evidence is impossible to miss. For Emily's family, this theory offered no comfort, only more questions. Another theory focused on the people in Emily's life. She had recently ended a 2-year relationship with her boyfriend, Daniel, a man described by neighbors as quiet but brooding. Detectives questioned him extensively, noting that breakups often ignite violent confrontations. Yet Daniel provided an alibi. Surveillance footage showed him at work during the hours Emily went missing. Still, many remained suspicious. Online sleuths dissected his body language during interviews, claiming he appeared cold, detached, almost rehearsed. Could someone else have been involved on his behalf? The darker theories began spreading like wildfire. Some believed Emily may have stumbled upon something she wasn't meant to see. A secret gathering deep in the woods, a crime in progress, or even a hidden structure where illegal activity was taking place. The fact that she left no trace seemed to support the idea that she hadn't simply disappeared, but had been deliberately erased. Campers came forward with unsettling stories of hearing strange chants in the forest at night, or spotting lights where no cabins existed. Whether coincidence or connection, these accounts only deepened the unease. Yet, the most unsettling theory of all didn't come from investigators or the media. It came from those who had searched the woods themselves. Some volunteers admitted that certain sections of the trail felt wrong, as if time slowed down, or the air grew heavier the deeper they went. A few whispered that Emily had not been taken by man or beast, but by something older, something the forest itself concealed. Of course, police dismissed these stories as hysteria. But as weeks turned into months with no answers, even the most rational minds began to wonder if there was a truth lurking inside those chilling theories. Despite the growing theories, what disturbed investigators the most was the silence, the complete absence of digital or physical clues. Emily had carried her phone that day, yet no GPS pings, text messages, or emergency calls were ever registered. Cell towers in the region showed no activity tied to her number after she entered the trail. For a generation glued to technology, the void was staggering. Friends and coworkers insisted Emily was the type to update her sister or post photos during a hike. But this time, nothing. It was as if her digital footprint had been wiped clean the moment she stepped into the woods. The Apple Watch she always wore was also missing. Investigators had initially hoped the device would provide answers. It tracked heart rate, steps, and even location data. But without it in their possession, there was no way to see what had happened in her final hours. For her family, the absence of that watch felt personal, almost mocking, like a final clue deliberately kept just out of reach. Why would someone take it? Or worse, why had it not been found if she had simply collapsed or wandered off? Bank records added another layer of strangeness. Not a single withdrawal, purchase, or attempted login was made after the day she vanished. Her credit cards and ID were still in her wallet, locked inside her car at the trailhead. Detectives remarked that most missing person cases left behind traces. Financial movement, accidental sightings, or even fraudulent use of their belongings. With Emily, there was none. It was as if she had ceased to exist the moment the trees closed around her. The silence extended beyond evidence. Search dogs, usually reliable in picking up human scent, seemed unable to track Emily beyond the first few hundred feet of the trail. Handlers described their behavior as erratic. The dogs circled aimlessly, whined, and then sat down as if the trail had ended in thin air. Experienced officers admitted they had never seen anything like it. The lack of a scent trail suggested only two possibilities. Either Emily had been lifted off the ground somehow, or she had never truly gone deeper into the trail at all. Her family clung to hope, but the silence was suffocating. Each unanswered phone call, each empty data search, each failed lead felt like the forest itself was swallowing their questions whole. Even detectives, trained to look for rational explanations, confessed in private that the case carried a different kind of weight. A young woman had entered a well-traveled path in broad daylight, surrounded by modern technology, and yet no sound, no signal, no trace remained. It wasn't just a disappearance anymore. It was an erasure. 3 weeks after Emily's disappearance, the official search had largely been scaled back. Police resources had moved on to other cases, and the investigation sat in limbo. But a handful of determined volunteers refused to stop. Among them was Mark Reynolds, a retired firefighter who had joined the search almost every day since hearing Emily's story on the news. Mark had no connection to her family, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was still waiting to be found in those woods. On a cool, overcast morning, Mark and 2 other volunteers returned to an area near a shallow creek about a mile from the trailhead. The region had already been combed before, but Mark insisted on checking again. Sometimes the smallest things are overlooked, he told the others as he pushed through the wet brush. The forest was unusually quiet that day. No birds, no rustling of leaves, just the sound of water trickling over rocks. He described the atmosphere later as too still, like the woods were holding their breath. As he moved along the creek bed, something faint caught his eye, a glint, just barely visible under a thin layer of wet leaves. At first, He thought it was a piece of broken glass or a scrap of metal. But when he crouched down and brushed the leaves aside, his heart skipped. Lying half buried in the mud was an Apple Watch, its face cracked but unmistakably intact. The band was coated in dirt, yet the device was instantly recognizable. Mark froze for several moments, staring at it. Volunteers had been warned not to disturb potential evidence, but curiosity gnawed at him. The screen, despite the crack, still flickered faintly when touched, as though the watch had clung desperately to life, long after its owner had vanished. Carefully, he slipped it into a plastic bag and radioed the discovery back to search coordinators. Within the hour, detectives rushed to the scene, their faces grim as they realized what had been found. The discovery reignited the case, but it also raised disturbing questions. Why had the watch been lying in plain sight after multiple searches had passed through the same area? Had it been there all along, hidden just enough to escape notice, or had someone placed it there later? Some of the volunteers whispered that the forest didn't give up the watch until it wanted to. Detectives didn't entertain such ideas out loud, but even they privately admitted that something about the timing and the condition of the find felt off. When detectives powered up Emily's Apple Watch, they expected only minor details: step counts, calories burned, maybe her last recorded location. Instead, what they uncovered made even seasoned investigators uneasy. The device had logged every second of her hike, until the very moment it stopped functioning. At first, the data seemed ordinary: a steady pace, a normal heart rate, regular movement along the trail. But then, just over an hour into her hike, everything changed. The heart rate graph showed a sudden spike, climbing faster than normal exercise could explain. It wasn't the gradual build of exertion, it was a sharp, violent surge, the kind the body registers in moments of extreme fear. Within minutes, the readings grew erratic, as if Emily had been running at full speed. Step data confirmed it. Her movement went from steady walking to frantic bursts, zigzagging through short distances before abruptly stopping. The watch recorded the chaos like a silent witness to her final moments. Investigators leaned in closer as they scrolled through the timeline. The heart rate peaked unnaturally high, far beyond what even sprinting could justify. Then, without warning, the readings plummeted. A flatline. No gradual slowdown, no lingering trace of recovery. It was as though Emily's heart had been pushed into panic, then silenced in an instant. Detectives who had seen countless cases admitted the pattern was unlike anything they had ever reviewed. What unsettled them more was the location data. The GPS trail ended abruptly near a dense cluster of trees, not far from the creek where the watch was found. But search teams had already scoured that same area multiple times without finding her body. How could the device record such a clear trail of terror, yet leave no physical evidence behind? No torn clothing, no remains, no signs of struggle. It was as if she had been swallowed by the forest itself at the exact moment her watch stopped recording. Rumors spread quickly after word leaked about the watch's data. Some whispered that she had been chased by something or someone that moved faster than she could. Others believed the spike in her heart rate wasn't caused by running at all, but by pure terror, the body's last scream before shutting down. Officially, detectives refused to speculate, but off the record, one admitted, "The watch tells us she was scared to death." What it doesn't tell us is why. Despite the shocking data from Emily's Apple Watch, investigators were left stranded in uncertainty. They followed the GPS trail again and again, retracing every recorded step. Yet nothing surfaced. No body, no clothing, Not even a fragment of evidence to explain what had happened in those final moments. The forest gave no answers. To the Carter family, it felt like being trapped inside a nightmare, where the questions only multiplied with every passing day. Emily had been there, alive and moving, her heart racing in terror. And then, she was gone. Hikers who once considered the trail safe began avoiding it entirely. Stories spread of eerie encounters. Voices echoing at night. The sound of hurried footsteps behind them. Only to find no one there. A few swore they heard a woman crying faintly through the trees. But when they called out, the woods answered with silence. For locals, the trail transformed from a place of peace to a shadowed landmark, cursed by the memory of the nurse, who had vanished without a trace. Detectives struggled to control the rumors. Some theories leaned on the possibility of a skilled predator, human or otherwise, capable of leaving no evidence behind. Others entertained the idea of something less rational, that the forest itself played a role in the disappearance. Even members of the search team admitted to feeling uneasy, describing sections of the woods as oppressive, as if an unseen presence was watching. With each retelling, Emily's case became less of a simple missing person report and more of a chilling legend. Her family refused to give up. They returned to the trail year after year, leaving flowers at the spot where her watch was discovered. Her mother often said she could still feel Emily's presence nearby, like she was close enough to touch but just beyond reach. For them, the watch was both a torment and a lifeline, a cruel reminder of her final terror, but also the last tangible proof that she had existed in those woods. To this day, hikers who wander too close to that creek describe a strange sensation, sudden chills, the feeling of being followed, or an urge to turn back. Some say it's just the weight of the story itself, heavy in the air. Others believe it's something more, that Emily Carter never truly left the forest, and that the unanswered mystery of her disappearance lingers with anyone who dares to walk the same path she did. So, what really happened to Emily Carter on that summer morning in 2023? Was she the victim of a hidden predator, a terrible accident, or something far stranger, something the forest itself refuses to reveal? Her Apple Watch gave us her last heartbeat, but it never gave us the truth. And perhaps that's the most terrifying part of all. Because if a nurse, on a bright summer day, with every piece of modern technology at her side, could simply vanish without a trace, then it means it could happen to anyone. The trail still exists, the creek still runs, and hikers still pass by the very spot where her watch was found. Some say if you walk quietly enough, you might hear it, the faint echo of footsteps running in the distance, and a heartbeat that suddenly stops.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.